Hi everybody. I guess you're all wondering where I was last week. Now, a few of you know this already, but basically my mom had been sick, and she was sick for a long time, but for the last 6 months or so it was getting pretty bad. And she was in and out of the hospital, and she passed away last week. And that's why I wasn't around, that's why I wasn't tweeting. You know, I just didn't feel like making videos or doing anything, really. But time passes, and, you know, you start to get over things, and you start to get back to your normal routine. And I finally felt like turning on the camera and making a video because, well, that's just what I do. And I can't promise that I'll be incredibly entertaining or informative for the next little while, but I'll give it a shot. I'm still kind of sad, of course, but I think it's time for me to start being me again. So, yeah, let's talk about some wrestling. The go-home show before Final Resolution was a mixed bag, just like the last show. But I would rank this show higher just because James Storm was back this week. And you guys must be tired of hearing me say this by now, but I'm going to say it again. For the last couple months, James Storm has been the best thing about this show, and it's not even a contest. This is the best James Storm we've ever seen, and it's kind of ironic that Rude is the one with the title, but Storm keeps showing him up. Not to speak ill of Bobby Roode at all, he's been doing a fine job, but honestly, the evolution of James Storm has just been more captivating to watch. I mean, everything he's done lately has been fantastic. That segment with Kurt Angle, that promo that Storm cut on him, that was dynamite. I expect AJ and Bobby Roode will be awesome too, but this is the main event of Final Resolution as far as I'm concerned. And maybe that just comes down to charisma, or maybe it's the fact that we know Roode's not losing that title, but I just think Storm and Angle has been more compelling. It's had better build-up, better promos. Again, not to say that the Roode-AJ stuff has been bad. It's probably been one of the stronger feuds they've written in a long time. I just think this has been better. James Storm has done the best job out of anyone with selling this match. The stuff with Bobby Roode was really good as well. You know, they're really going all out to make this guy a detestable heel, and that final image of him standing over AJ with the belt, that was great. That's how you should end a go-home show. But there's one thing I would have changed about this. The promo he cut on Dixie Carter. Now, you have no idea how to run a wrestling company, you're just here because of daddy's money, yada yada. This probably sounded familiar to you. That's because a lot of people have said pretty much the exact same thing. They need to deepen Roode's character a little, because he seems like he's maybe starting to fall into a stereotypical heel pattern here. You're becoming a little bit too reliant on a lot of typical heel tropes that we see way too much of these days. I want to see them explore more of the psychology of who this guy is and why he did what he did. And they have done that up to a point. You know, they've done a good job hammering home the idea that when Angle screwed him over at Bound for Glory, something in Roode's mind just snapped. But I'd like to see more of that. What I would have done here is, when they told Roode to apologize for attacking Dixie, I would have had him say, "Dixie, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasted 9 years of my life busting my ass to help build your company just so you could ignore me, piss on me, and cast me aside in favor of screw-ups like Jeff Hardy, or parasites like Hall and Nash who were just looking for a cash grab, or overpaid has-beens like Booker T and Mick Foley who were just coasting by on their reputations. I'm not sorry I attacked you, Dixie. I'm sorry I didn't do it sooner." That's what I want. I want to see them really get inside Roode's head. And one of the things that I love about this James Storm push is that they've been doing that with him. You know, like when he accused AJ of being the guy who attacked him from behind? Now, some people didn't like that. They thought it made Storm look too unlikable or something. Personally, I thought it was one of the best things they did with him. The man had just been stabbed in the back by his best friend. It would have been ridiculous if he hadn't been really paranoid after that. I want to see this kind of stuff with Roode. You know, give us more character and less stereotypical heel. He plays it great, I just want to see a little more nuance. Nevertheless, the Bobby Roode stuff has still been really good, and I'm excited to see that match. And I think they've hit on what they need to do here, finally. Take Bobby Roode and James Storm Kurt Angle. These are the best things they've got going right now. Build the show around these two storylines, and you really can't go wrong. I just wish the rest of the show had been as good as this stuff was. Samoa Joe being used as a sacrificial lamb for Abyss is just ridiculous. The fact that Joe is still over after all the time they've spent crapping on him shows that they're totally missing the boat. I like that Abyss is the monster again, but this guy has been repackaged and re-gimmicked so many times now, it really doesn't mean that much. And I could not care less about Immortal trying to get him back in the group. This just feels like they're grasping at straws, just trying to come up with any reason they can think of to drag out this Immortal angle, which already passed the expiration date months ago. Bully Ray and Steiner are rapidly becoming comic relief, Gunner's jobbing to a referee, and yet Immortal still exists. This faction could not be more irrelevant. Just end it.
This whole show is ridiculous!
They had an in-ring segment with Crimson, Matt Morgan, Pope, and Devon to hype the tag title match at the pay-per-view. The promos were a little long-winded, but they were perfectly fine. The fight afterward was alright. And had the segment ended with that, I would have been okay with this. But the second Devon's kids get involved, just like that, I stopped giving a shit. Nothing against Terrence and Terrell, but they've given us no reason to care about these two. I'm not intrigued when they show up, I'm just annoyed. And the same thing applies to Pope and Devon. All these months later, this interminable storyline still makes no damn sense at all. What has been the point of all this? Did Pope try to endear himself to Devon just so he could bring Terrence and Terrell over to the dark side? Why? For what purpose? Never mind, don't tell me. I honestly don't care.
This whole show violates everything about my journalistic integrity.
And the worst part is that this match is clearly not about the tag titles at all. It's about Pope, Devon, Terrence, and Terrell, and the titles are an afterthought. If you want to repair the tag team division after Hernandez and Anarquia ruined it, stuff like this is not going to help. The knockout stuff was improved this week. Nothing amazing, but they stopped with the eye candy angle and actually focused more on hyping the match at the pay-per-view. Mickie James had a match where I think Madison Rayne was supposed to soften her up. Oh man, couldn't say that with a straight face. This was okay. It was somewhat better than your typical Madison Rayne match. I know that's not saying a whole lot, but she worked a little harder than she usually does. Was it great? No. But it was watchable. Except for the part with the rest holds. Madison needs to forget about doing those during matches. She's so small and weak looking that realistically her opponent should just be able to power out of that no problem. So when Mickie actually tried to sell the rest hold, it just looks silly. But while that match may have been flawed, at least it was logical. It was better than the other one. You know, Karen puts Gail in a match with Tracy Brooks and tells Tracy to just lie down for her. But instead of lying down, Tracy kicks Gail's ass until Madison and Karen have to save her.
I don't know what my future holds, but I know one thing.
This was absolutely ridiculous. You have Tracy get in a flurry of offense and surprise Gail with some hope spots. Then you have Gail get serious and beat Tracy clean anyway. Why? Because Gail is the champion and she's better than Tracy is. That's why. To have your top heel get embarrassed like this by a woman who has not even been an active wrestler in this company for several years was pretty much the stupidest thing you could have done. When she came back to the company, you wasted no time in putting all your eggs in Gail's basket. She's the only heel knockout you've given us any reason to invest in whatsoever, and she's got both championships. Gail needs to be protected. She needs to be a strong, effective character, because if she's not, you've got nothing else to work with, and you've pretty much shot yourself in the foot.
I was a war correspondent, and now I'm covering this!
Seriously, what did booking the match like this accomplish? It made the woman that you focused the entire knockout division around look ridiculously weak, and told us that Karen and or Madison will most likely interfere in the match at the pay-per-view. Well, guess what? We already knew that. Instead of this, wouldn't it make more sense to book Gail as someone who will utilize interference when it suits her, but doesn't necessarily need it to get the job done? At least then Gail would still look dangerous. This made her look like a chump, and that sure as hell doesn't sell this pay-per-view match.
I'm done! I am done with you! I'm done with this entire show!
So that was the go-home show. Definite mixed bag here. The hype for the undercard matches didn't work for me, but the hype for Rude, AJ, and Storm Angle was strong, and those were the main selling points of the pay-per-view anyway. And by the time you guys see this, the show will have already aired, so I'm just going to add the Final Resolution review onto this video. So don't go anywhere. I'm going to turn the camera off so I can watch Final Resolution, and then I'll be right back and give you guys my thoughts on that in like 10 seconds. Alright, stay tuned. Okay, I just watched Final Resolution, so let's get into this. The show started with Rob Van Dam and Christopher Daniels. You know, this was a good match. It could have used some near falls, though, and I'm glad they didn't stick the X Division match in the opening spot like they usually do, but I just don't see the point in continuing to put Van Dam over in this feud. Rob Van Dam has never meant less than he does right now. His wrestling hasn't been bad, but it's obvious his passion isn't what it used to be, and he still can't cut a decent promo to save his life. Meanwhile, Daniels has been really entertaining lately. He's been doing all the promos in this feud. He's the one talking about going after championships. He's the one who's actually interesting right now. And yet they continue to put Van Dam over, seemingly for no other reason than he's Rob Van Dam, even though that doesn't mean nearly as much as it used to.
You people are fools!
Really don't agree with that. I think Van Dam is reaching the point now where he needs to start thinking about elevating other people. I kind of doubt we're going to see that, though, so we may just have to continue putting up with him. Eric Young versus Robbie E for the TV title. Haha! Yet another thing to add to the list of reasons why TNA should not be wasting their time with Robbie E. Did you hear those "We Want Ryder" chants in the audience during this match? Just saying. This was the same match we've seen before from these guys. Eric out-wrestles Robbie, then Rob Terry interferes, then Robbie takes control with punches and elbows and the rest hold of doom. Eric fights back until there's more interference from Rob Terry, Robbie gets the fluke victory, and the referee does nothing about Rob Terry even though he's constantly interfering right in front of the guy's face.
Oh my God, he's gonna puke! He's gonna puke! He's gonna puke! He's gonna puke!
This match was boring as usual. And note to the agents, if you give Robbie enough leeway to the point where he's breaking out the rest hold again after doing almost nothing in the match, this is a sign that you've given him too much leeway. The stupid match eventually ends. Unfortunately, the stupid feud continues. Matt Morgan and Crimson versus the Pope and Devon for the tag team titles. I really don't have much to say here. I really didn't care about this one. I do like Morgan and Crimson, but Pope and Devon just don't make compelling opponents for them. You know, the match was slow-paced and not very interesting, and as I expected, the whole thing just ended up as a vehicle to push this thing with Devon's kids forward. The problem is, that storyline has never caught on. Austin Aries versus Kid Cash for the X Division title. This was a lot of fun. It was entertaining when both guys were cheating their asses off, and I marked out when they did the Kid Cash Easy Money spot where they turned a top rope powerbomb into a Hurricane Rana. They didn't do it in midair like those guys used to back in the day, but it was still awesome. The only problem was, since it was heel versus heel, the audience had no idea how to react. I mean, there was probably more support for Aries. Nevertheless, I'm really still not sure what the point of this was. Unless it was just a time filler while Dixie tries to sign John Morrison. I don't care to see a prolonged feud with these guys, but for a one and done, I liked it a lot. But now that it's over, can we please get Aries in the ring with someone who is not Kid Cash, Jesse Sorensen, or Brian Kendrick? Mickie James versus Gail Kim for the Knockouts title. If you remember that match that these two had on Raw a while back, you were probably on pins and needles during this thing. But this was a pretty good match. Not everything I was hoping for. I keep expecting Gail to work like she did the last time she was there, but then I have to keep reminding myself that no, she can't do that, she's a heel now. Still, this was one of the better knockout matches we've seen lately. There were a couple stiff shots in this one, like when Gail slammed Mickie down right on her face, and when Gail missed the shot in the corner and flew out of the ring instead and hit her knee on the steel steps, that must have hurt. I think they were holding back a little because this feud is probably going to go on for a while, so I'm not raving about the match, but I did like it. Unfortunately, the finish was really underwhelming. Madison Rayne interferes and costs Mickie the match. Everybody saw that coming. It was either going to be Madison or Karen or both of them. It's becoming a real problem with this angle, which is one of the reasons why I don't like the Karen thing. So, ultimately, this was a good match, but the finish didn't help. James Storm versus Kurt Angle. The crowd sucked during this match, which is really unfortunate because this told the best story of the night. There was some really nice ring psychology with Storm fighting through the injury and Angle targeting the head. And look, a strong competitive match, Clean finish, no bullshit, and Kurt Angle didn't lose anything by doing the job here. Sure, it was surprising, but in a good way. I was expecting Angle to win and set up a rubber match next month, but this just shows that they're really behind James Storm right now, and that's fantastic. They can't be afraid to have people go over clean like this, and that goes for faces and heels. Storm gained way more with a clean win over Kurt Angle than Gale did by getting a cheap pin on Mickey. Yes, I know sometimes heels cheat, but they shouldn't have to do it all the time. Jeff Jarrett versus Jeff Hardy cage match. Yeah. If Jarrett wins, Hardy gets fired. If Hardy wins, then he gets a world title shot. But there was a new stip added that if Hardy wins, then either Jarrett or Karen get fired as well. And for some reason they chose to announce this little wrinkle via the internet after the Go Home show had aired instead of, doing it on Impact.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I don't get it either. It was obviously a late decision, and this is one of those areas where TNA's taping schedule really hurts them. Because if they want to change something or add something late in the game, they really can't. Not effectively, anyway. Announcing something like this online the day before the show, that's not going to get you any extra buys. It comes off like an afterthought, even if you follow through on it. Anyway, the match was fairly decent. Should have been longer, though. There were some cool spots here. Hardy even did the swanton off the top of the cage, which was awesome, even though Mike Tenay did his best to suck all the excitement out of it. The problem is, Jeff Jarrett just isn't a cage match guy. His wrestling style is very old school, and that doesn't lend itself to this type of match, not in 2011. It certainly wasn't bad, but it wasn't unbelievable either. It was good. But with everything that was on the line here, it should have been spectacular, and it just never quite reached that point. And part of that was because it didn't have enough time. The main event was scheduled to go for half an hour, and they still tried to squeeze in 8 matches. This really would have benefited from taking a match off the show. TV title match. But what's done is done. Hardy wins, so one of the Jarretts is going to be off TV for a while. I like that. Any chance we could get rid of both of them? Please? Bobby Roode versus AJ Styles for the world title Iron Man match. The match itself was excellent, but let's talk about the booking. The injury angle with AJ really should not have been done in my opinion. Number 1, because you were already doing a similar angle with James Storm. And number 2, with how this played out, it accomplished the exact opposite of what it was supposed to. First you have James Storm fight against an injury and overcome incredible odds to beat Kurt Angle. And then you have a healthy Bobby Roode going up against an injured AJ Styles who's working with one good knee and still can't beat him. One angle made the guy look like a star, the other one unfortunately did not. Why even do the angle in the first place if you were going to book it like this? All this did was make Bobby Roode look weak. That's all it did.
Oh, what a bunch of bull.
And the finish was such BS. Why couldn't they get 5 more minutes? Why did the match have to end there? Why didn't Sting just come out and give them 5 more minutes like the crowd was chanting? I don't know. Probably because they wanted some kind of cliffhanger to lead them into Impact. And unfortunately, ending the show like this only serves as yet another reminder that Impact is more important than the pay-per-views. And that has never made any sense to me. Yeah, I get it that most of your revenue comes from the TV deal, but just because TV takes priority in that sense, it doesn't mean you have to deliberately undersell your pay-per-views. Why does one have to be seen as more important than the other? Why can't they be equal? Pay-per-views are what you want people to pay money to see, but hardly anyone's buying them. Don't you wonder why that is? It's not because pay-per-view is a dying business, it's because you don't give people any incentive to buy them. Because everyone knows by now that all the really important stuff is going to happen on free TV. That's why one of the Jarretts is getting fired on Thursday. That's why the main event ended the way it did. Just because you think pay-per-view business is on the decline, that doesn't mean you should help it along. I don't know what they think they're doing with that, but it just seems like they're screwing themselves out of making money off these things. And that seems really ass backwards, but unfortunately I don't see it changing anytime soon.